there's no point in hiring diverse people if you're not going to include them on a day-to-day basis.
Welcome to the Voice of Visma podcast, where the heartbeat of our community comes to life. Join us as we chat with Visma leaders and colleagues, sharing their stories, industry insights, and valuable career lessons.
Welcome to Voice of Visma. My name is Henny and I will be your host for this episode. I work as a people manager in the group people team, and one of my responsibilities is within diversity, equity and inclusion, which is also the topic for today's episode. And with me today in studio, I have Ida, who will help me shed a light on diversity and inclusion from an employee perspective. So welcome, Ida.
Thank you.
Why don't you start off by giving us a little introduction about yourself and your role in Visma?
Yeah, my name is Ida. I, on a day-to-day basis, work as a digital marketing specialist, I think my title is, for a company called Visma Plandesk. We are based in Aarhus, where we create a planning tool that can give you an overview of the year and all that you do. Outside of work, I am mostly a nerd. Don't really focus much on marketing outside of work, as I listen to podcasts about TTRPGs, I read books, I have way too many plants.
Perfect. Yeah. And you're also interested in diversity and inclusion, which is why we're here.
For sure.
So what's that for you, and how has diversity and inclusion impacted you in your professional journey?
That's a hard question, because it's one of those, I stumbled into my current position, and through that, I stumbled into the DE&I peer-to-peer community, where I sit as one of the two leads today, the main lead actually. And I just feel like diversity is something that should be obvious. Everyone is different. And in order to be your best self, both personal and professional, you need to feel included in your workplace. And in my company, we have, I think, 7 or 8 different nationalities, even though we're only about 30 people working. So we are a very diverse workplace. And to me, it's very important that every one of my colleagues feel included and that they can be part of the conversation, be part of the day-to-day work. And I want that for everyone, not just my immediate colleagues, but for everyone in Visma, everyone everywhere should feel included. So that's something I try to work on every day.
Yeah, sounds good. So this is what motivated you as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And how did you become a lead in the DE&I community?
I almost don't remember anymore. It was...
Just came natural?
It started out, I somehow got invited to, I think it started with a webinar actually, that, because when the community was started, it was started by Ida Algotsson, I think her name is. So she started the community originally, and she hosted a webinar with a pride theme that I just kind of signed up to, I think, and that's how I got connected to her. And then somehow I got invited to a talk, and we started having a little bit connection back and forth. And then when she wanted to step down and hand it over to someone else, she approached me and asked, like, would I be interested in taking over? And I felt entirely unprepared for it, and I had no idea what I was going to do. But I was like, okay, if you believe in me, then I'll try. And so I took over, and now we're a nice little group that try to work with diversity and inclusion, try to promote it on a day-to-day basis. So it was very much unplanned, but it's been a nice change, and it's something I like doing.
Yeah, it's a nice attitude though to just say yes to the challenges that comes your way, and it's also inspiring to see that kind of drives you as well within this. So how would you say that? You said that you started with this kind of completely unknown to it, but how has then your role as this community lead also developed over the past years?
I've tried to find my feet. I also have a good help from the other lead who has a lot more leadership experience than I have. And that was why she came in as a bit of a support to me to help me out learning that. And I've tried to figure out how to lead a group of people who share an interest. And we have regular meetings where we meet up and talk about things and what we want to do and how we try to promote it locally in our different positions. And it's learning by doing, and I still feel like I learn new things every time we meet up. And that's also something I think is important when you're working with these questions, because it is something you can never know everything about this topic. And the more you learn, what's that quote from an old song? The more you learn, the less you know. Yes. And that's how it feels sometimes, where it's like, oh, so that's what this situation is like, and that's what your reality is like. And
it's a continuous learning loop, one might say.
All the time.
But now you briefly talk now about how then the DE&I community operates. But why is this also important for our employees?
Because if you don't feel like you're included in a task or in a workplace, then you're not going to feel motivated, and you're not going to really care all that much, I feel like. It's like feeling included, I think, is a big part of feeling motivated about coming to work every day. We spend a lot of time at work, often more time than awake at home. True. And yeah, it's just a fact, like a normal work day is 8 hours, and that's, what is that, a third of the day? Yes. So if you don't feel included at work, that's definitely going to affect how motivated you are about coming to work. I'm not saying you have to wake up every day and feel like, yay, I'm going to work. That's not what I'm saying at all. But if you wake up and you feel like, oh, I don't want to go there, I don't like my workplace, everyone is always speaking in a language I don't understand, or I'm hearing impaired and people never make sure to face me when they're talking, or I have to take other routes because my wheelchair can't fit everywhere. That's going to affect how motivated you are. That's going to affect how well you perform your tasks. And if you don't feel included, you're not going to be all there. Yeah. And that's definitely going to affect your overall mood. So,
yeah, I totally agree. And talking about it being included, like inclusive is, of course, one of our core values here in Visma. And how would you say then that is communicated across the entire organization?
I think at group level, Visma is very good at talking about it. It's something that is brought up continuously through like those big annual speeches and everything. And then I think it's a bit hard to get it to trickle down into the different business units. I sometimes feel like, yes, up at group level, it's like, yes, we are inclusive. It's one of our core values. It's super important. Some business units and MDs and managers for teams are going to be very on board with it and really want to work with it and try to include it. And others are going to see it as a nice to have, that, yeah, we're inclusive. We don't care. And so finding that balance of how do we get it to trickle down properly, this sense of how important it actually is, that I feel could use some work.
Yeah. Because of course, like you said before, like in being inclusive, it contains so many different parts, right? And it can mean also different things to different people, and also different culture, different countries and everything. So it's something we need to continue to work on, for sure.
Yeah, it's a continuous process. It's one of those things, like you're never done with this work. It's something that it's a never-ending project. It doesn't have a start date and a finish date. It's something that you need to really incorporate into a culture. And it comes down to everyone. At the end of the day, it's up to every single employee to help work with this, because if we don't, then it's going to fall apart very fast.
How would you then say that the community, the DE&I community, can help make this happen, help do this trickle-down effect to an even larger extent?
We try to, at present time, we try to come out with some informative and sometimes a bit thought-provoking articles that we post on our Space channel. But one of the main things that we do is, like, during our meetings, we try to talk. We're a very small community, and I would love for there to be more of us so that we could have bigger meetings and get more champions in that can help out with this, because we talk a lot about what can we do on an everyday basis, and how can I be the ambassador for DE&I or for inclusivity in my business unit? What can I do? And it can be bigger, like, events, or we can do, in my company, we have tradition days where we have, because we are so many different nationalities, and then we have tradition days where people from different cultures, like, they can present something small. We've had everything from Swedish Lucia celebration to a date tasting from one of the, he's from Bahrain. And so, like, just these little things that are, and then we get explained, like, okay, what has dates meant in his culture? And when he grew up with it, like, and then he had 7 or 8 different kinds of dates that we got to try.
Yes, I did not know there were so many different kinds, actually.
There's different ways to prepare them and serve them, and then just little traditions about them behind. Like, I've learned that, like, culturally they say that you should always eat dates in an odd number.
Oh.
So you don't eat 2, you eat 1 or you eat 3 or 7 or 5, like, not an even number. When I ask why, they're just like, I don't know, but that's just how it is. And you don't have to know why. It's just like, okay, that's so funny. That's like a little quirk from your religion or your culture that I just learned. That's very interesting. We had, and I was one of the hosts for that, we had a Lucia celebration, because that's a big thing in Sweden. And we talked about it and, like, told a bit of the story behind, like, the saint and where the celebration comes from. And the Danes and the Norwegians were like, I've celebrated the same thing my entire life. I never knew these things. And I was like, oh, that's something we actually talk about in school. So it's like, that's a way to just do it very low-key and locally in our company. And that's something we also talk about in the community. Like, okay, so we're doing these things, and to just try and spread different ideas, just allowing people to be themselves. And I would love to see more of that. For, like, if we could just get more people in to have more of that and just help spread it out around. Just, it doesn't have to be huge or complicated. It can just be such a small little thing as sharing a little piece of your culture or your interests or your problems, if you have something that...
Yeah. It could be whatever.
Yeah.
Just be curious about your fellow colleagues.
Yeah. Be curious, be respectful of their needs, and some of them will be preferences, like, I don't want to be hugged, or I don't want to shake hands because that makes me uncomfortable for whatever reason, be it cultural preference, whatever. And it's like, just try to listen in on what people prefer and how they want to be met, and meet them halfway.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, because we do, of course, work a lot with leadership development, for example, and how you can lead across cultures, and how we are all unique, so everybody needs maybe a different learning plan and learning goal, so to say. But it's also very important like between employees as well, to be this kind of curious and ask questions and also treat everybody the way they want to be treated, not necessarily the way you want to be treated back, because we're unique and different.
Definitely. And I do agree that management is a big key in all of this, because I think managers are a big part of forming a culture, because they will open up. If you have a manager who is very open and respectful and willing to meet you halfway, then you as an employee, or at least I as an employee, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but then I feel like, okay, this is a workplace where it's okay to be open about different things, and that also includes putting down boundaries. Like, I need this to be able to feel good and to be able to operate in the best possible way. And that can be, I need to work from home 2 or 3 days a week because we are at an open office landscape space that is so popular nowadays, that we know through research that it's really not very good for productivity. People actually perform better when they're not in an open landscape. But we've learned to adapt to it, most of us, but maybe some don't. And so they're like, if I could work from home 3 days a week and come to the office 2 days a week, I'm going to be much more productive. I'm going to perform much better. Isn't it a win-win situation to let that employee work from home? If they, of course, can prove that I do perform better working from home. And all those little things. And if you can put down those boundaries and feel like that's okay to ask for what you need to be a better employee and to perform better, it's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for the company.
It's a win-win. Yeah. And I guess that's also, like, I think for many people, you have this kind of idea of what diversity and inclusion is, but it's so much more, right? It kind of is incorporated into everything we do. Like you say, if we're sitting at work or if you're sitting at the home office, that's the part of being kind of aware and inclusive. And
it is, of course, the big things like gender, religion, sexuality, skin color. Those things are there, they're included, they need to be. But it is also the day-to-day business. There's no point in hiring diverse people if you're not going to include them on a day-to-day basis.
But I'm a bit curious, though, as to where we in Visma stand when it comes to diversity and inclusivity compared to other companies. What are your thoughts? Do you have any feeling as to how we are doing?
I think we're very good at talking about it, and we have a good vision of where we want to be. But it's also hard for me to talk about it, because I know my company, and then I know a little bit about other companies through the people I work with in the peer-to-peer community. But I think that Visma has a very good vision for what we want to be. And then it's about how we can get it to trickle down into the different offices and business units and really make people feel like this is more than just a nice to have buzzword. It is something that is really beneficial. And I know that they've started to include more about inclusivity training in it's called Visma Management Academy.
Yes. And also in the leadership development in general.
Yeah. I think that is really good that there's now being put more focus on that, because then it hopefully will be easier to get it to trickle down to the different companies and to get more people to see that, no, it's not about that we should have 50-50 men and women and we need to hire someone from a different nationality because that's going to look good on paper. It's about so much more than that. And I think we're walking the right direction. And the fact that Visma is willing to put this as a core value, I think is a good thing.
Yes, it is. It is, and also should continue to be a part of our everyday work life for all. So just taking it a bit back to the employees, what steps can employees take to be more aware and incorporate more of diversity and inclusion into their everyday work?
I think it comes down to respect, trust, and openness. That you need to be respectful of other people. And that's, again, like I was mentioning before, with everything, from if people don't speak a language, then try to find the common language. Okay, everyone here speaks English. Then let's speak English, even though there's only one person who doesn't speak Danish or Norwegian or Dutch. But since everyone speaks English, why not speak English together then? If someone is hearing impaired, make sure that you face them when you talk. Just those little things. Be respectful of boundaries. Here is someone who needs to step away, to take a breather, to get a bit of mental bandwidth. It's not hard to respect the boundaries that people set down. But of course, to be able to do that, people need to feel like they can be open about those boundaries. And to be able to be open about it, you need to trust that it's okay to be. So it's a nice little triangle that comes together. Connected. Yeah. And it's very hard to build up that culture. And it's very easy to break it if you do. So that's why it's a continuous work that you need to really, that's for managers to build the foundation of that, but then it's also for the employees to try to build that up and
then you don't necessarily need to understand how everybody else is doing, but...
Oh, definitely not. You don't need to, in order to respect someone, you don't need to understand it. I can never understand what it's like to be transgender or be deaf or be in a wheelchair. I can try it out. I can spend a day in a wheelchair. That doesn't mean that I'm going to understand what it's like to not have use of my legs, for example. But you don't need to understand something to respect it. And I think that is something we forget a lot.
It's just being aware and, like you said, don't need to understand it to accept and respect. I think that's a nice way of closing in this topic. Thank you so much, Ida, for joining us here in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
And sharing your insights. And thank you out there for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes of Voice of Visma. If you have any comments or topics that you want to discuss further with us, please don't hesitate to let us know. Thank you.